Good evening and welcome to your final episode of the Royal Marines It's a State of Mind mini-series. If you are watching for the first time, my name is Captain Ryan and I have the pleasure of helping deliver tonight's show to you. If you missed last week or any previous weeks, you can catch up through the links that will be sent to you at the end of this episode. Last week we had an expert presentation on the shotgun, saw an excellent talk through of the physical aspect to the ROT or recruit orientation phase, and had a great circuit for you to complete. We then spoke to Lewis about his time as a landing craftsman and heard about the Commando phase part of training and the lead up to the Commando tests. As I have pointed out throughout, this series is here to ensure that you are best prepared for not only your pre-joining fitness test, but also for the recruit orientation phase and subsequently recruit training. As always, everyone on tonight's episode are of course serving Royal Marines, and we will hopefully answer more of the questions that you have about all stages of your joining journey and training before nicely rounding off the series. We will shortly move on to another weapons presentation from Coops. This week we have the General Purpose Machine Gun, or GPMG, which is a weapon we often refer to as a battle-winning weapon, but it will be great to show you guys. Then Joe and Blaine have another circuit to deliver to you and will give you a good understanding of certain things you can and should do to help avoid injury. We have a lot of recruits that end up in Hunter Company, which is a rehabilitation centre. Although some are unavoidable, a lot of the injuries are avoidable through a number of factors that the lads will talk you through. I will talk you through some more of our secondary specialisations, or SSQs, before we talk to Blaine, who has completed the physical training SSQ, so he's best placed to give you an overview of that course. This week we'll then cover the Commando tests and King Squad pass out so that you have an idea of what the light at the end of the tunnel will look like. As you can see at the side of your screen, the chat function is also live, so please feel free to ask away with any questions you may have. Whilst it is the final episode in the series, I feel it would be slightly remiss of me to not pass on some personal advice. As I have said previously, I've worked in the recruitment side of things for the last few years, so know what most of you will be thinking and how you're feeling about your application. Firstly, you have already done the hardest part in my eyes. You have put your head above the parapet and sent in your application, which is a lot more than everyone who is purely just thinking about it has done. So well done for making that first step, which is certainly the hardest part. Another thing I have often seen is people like yourselves submitting an application, but then never actually following through with it because they've self-assessed that they aren't good enough. I want to reassure you that it is achievable and is certainly not out of your reach. We want motivated and relatively fit, robust men and women turning up at Lympstone. We will then progressively turn you into a commando, so please let us do the assessing. You just need to try your best. My next piece of advice is pretty straightforward. There are no secrets as to what happens during training. In all honesty, there is more information online now than ever before. There are hundreds of videos and articles online about different elements of training and what life is like in the Royal Marines. Subscribe to the Globe and Laurel magazine, search through the Royal Marines YouTube and social media channels, and chat to the other people who are in the same shoes as you. There are forums and all sorts of means of finding out information, or as I always say, there is a specialist team within our department who are on the other end of a phone call, email, or even WhatsApp to help you out. Get as much info as possible before you get here, but don't overthink it. Turn up, fit and uninjured, and let us do the rest whilst you employ all elements of Commando spirit. Now we'll head over to Coops for the last time to get your presentation on this week's weapon system. Okay, ladies and gents, for the final time, I've got Coops at the side of me, who this week is going to talk you through the GPMG, which is his favourite weapon, so this should be interesting. Coops, over to you.
The GPMG, which stands for General Purpose Machine Gun. As the boss said, it is my favourite weapon system. I am very sort of biased towards this, and I'll sort of do my best to explain that as I go along. So working from back to front with sort of a few of the stats. You've got a removable butt on it. You can swap that out for another one if need be. Pistol grip, cocking handle. The top cover on there, so that is then what you would raise up to put your ammunition on, as it's a belt-fed weapon, not magazine-fed, as with a lot of the other weapon systems we've seen. Moving forward, so you've got the handle here, which can be used as a carrying handle for sort of short moves, sharp bounds, and it's also the way that you would remove the barrel from the weapon, as this is a suppression weapon, meaning it will fire sort of lots of bursts to suppress a certain area. The barrels can heat up, so they need to be changed out every 400 rounds. And then the rate of fire is controlled at the front here by something called a gas regulator. That just controls how fast the gun actually fires. Looking at ranges, as it is here, this is what's known as the light roll because you're using the integrated bipod legs. The effective range for that is 800 meters. So employing this at a section level, you're already sort of punching out a good sort of bit of range compared to the SA-80s sort of firing to 300 meters. And as I said in previous episode, pairing really well with the sharpshooter, that precision versus suppression, all integrated in one section then. Ways you can improve this is then mounting it on a tripod. That will then push the effective range out to 1800 meters. And we can also do something called map predicted fire, which allows us to fire out to 2.5K.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, as you can tell, he knows a lot about this weapon, so we'll just talk a bit more about it. Obviously, the GPMG has been in service for quite a while now, and is such a useful weapon. Do you just want to sort of explain why?
Yeah, so it's one of the oldest weapons I can think of that we're still using. It came into service in the 50s, so it has been around a very long time, in fact replacing the Bren gun, for anyone who can remember that. So the reason why we're still using it today is because it is such an effective weapon system, and it's a sort of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it policy with it really. It still works just as well today as it did back then, and there is still a massive requirement to have a suppression weapon or an area weapon such as this integrated within our sections and all the other areas that we use it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as Coop said, from a commander's point of view, we often refer to this as a battle-winning weapon, and that's, you'll get that drilled into you when you're in training to get the gun up and running as fast as you can when you're in a firefight, just purely because, as you say, it's used as a suppression weapon and certainly gets the enemy's heads down straight away. Briefly covering training, what sort of training will the guys get whilst they're at Lympstone?
Yeah, so as with any weapon system you cover during training, you will spend a lot of time on it, getting to grips with all the correct weapon drills, making sure you're fully competent on it, getting your weapon handling test sorted, and then actually getting to take it on the range and have a bit of fun with it, firing.
Obviously, once you've passed out and got your green beret, as you went on, you've done countless courses and sort of range packages with this. Do you just want to explain a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so the fun doesn't stop with just getting trained up on this. There are a lot of other things you can do. So when I specialised into the platoon weapons branch, my sort of sub-specialisation within that was a machine gunner, which was employing this in the sustained fire role, which, as I mentioned earlier, you can mount it onto a tripod. So that's then working as part of a fire support group, which means getting up onto a bit of sort of high ground and supporting the guys as they move up through, closing with the targets. So great bit of fun. At the time that was a 3-week course, and yeah, just a lot of time on the range, a lot of firings, all stuff that I love to do, and yeah, great bit of fun.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for that, Coops. As you mentioned, you'll get a lot of training on this during recruit training. There's certainly opportunity to get your hands on it, definitely when you pass out, because clearly that's what you're getting trained on it for. That's pretty much all of the weapons we've got to speak to you about during this series. So just to recap, we covered the Glock, the SA-80, the shotgun, the sharpshooter, and obviously the GPMG. Certainly weapons you will get hands on, plus more when you get to training and then pass out once you've earned your green beret. Now we're going to move over to Joe and Blaine to get this week's PT session.
Welcome to session 5. I'm Joe, and this is Blaine. As I look forward, we're going to deliver today's PT session, and then we're also going to give you a quick little interest piece about injury prevention. The final session is designed to target the posterior chain in stage 1 using concentric movements. The key here is to use perfect form throughout and not time yourself. Stage 2 will challenge and develop your upper body and core strength, which will not only help improve your RMFT score, but will also be relevant to your time in the CTC gymnasium, where you'll be conducting exercises such as press-ups and pull-ups to a higher standard, and more importantly, rope climbs, which is a movement that follows you onto the bottom field. The first part of the session will be 6 reps 3 times through, consisting of single leg broad jump. Notice there, Blaine took a big jump off of a single leg, but he made sure that he landed on 2 feet. Concentric squat jumps. As you can see from his starting position, just like with any squat, his feet are shoulder width apart and his hands cupped in front of him to help maintain balance. As he goes through the next phase, he will squat down, maintaining 90 degrees with his legs, his knees don't go over his toes, and his arms split behind him. And as he drives forward, it's going to help him get a range of motion and a nice high jump. This exercise will really help build the power in your quads. Moving into the final exercise of the first phase, the concentric ski jumps. Okay, starting position is going to be knee rested on the floor, hands cupped in front of your chest to help maintain balance. Notice how his leading leg, his knees aren't protruding over the front of his toes. As he moves into the next phase, he's going to drive up and jump as high as he can, swapping his legs over. You want to catch yourself and then lower your knee to the ground. If you don't have the use of a mat, you need to make sure that you aren't smashing your knee off the floor and injuring yourself. Now we're going to move on to the second phase of today's session. This is going to consist reps of 21, 15, 9, 15 and 21. The first exercise, alternate elbow crunches. Adopting the position with fingertips on his temple, he's going to bring alternate elbow to alternate knee and crunch in the middle. Moving on to the next exercise, hand release press-ups. Notice as he's getting into the starting position, head and eyes facing forward, nice neutral spine throughout, and as he goes through to the next stage of the process, his elbows are tucked in tight to his body, his hands come away from the floor, returning his hands to the floor, and he's driving the floor away from his body. Moving to the next exercise, flutter kicks. Starting position, hands cupped across his chest, legs outstretched, raise a couple of inches off the floor. He's then going to move each leg individually up and down for the allocated rep range. Moving on to the next exercise, diamond press-ups. As you're adopting the starting position, just like any other press-up, you want to make sure that you get a nice neutral spine, except this time your hands aren't going to be shoulder width apart. You're going to be forming a nice diamond position on the floor. Head and eyes facing forward, neutral spine. As he goes through the next phase, his elbows are tight to his body, and this exercise is really going to hit hard on the triceps. Moving on to the final exercise, squat thrusts. Again, entering the initial stage of this exercise is just like maintaining the press-up position, head and eyes forward, neutral spine, hands shoulder width apart. When he moves into the next phase, he's going to move his feet nice and quickly through, knees up to his chest. Notice how his head and eyes are still facing forward. The final phase of the exercise is shooting his legs back out to the rear. Head and eyes facing forward, neutral spine. We talked about the importance of warming up and cooling down, but it's also important to talk about injury prevention. You need to make sure that you are stretching, not just in the warm-ups and the cool-downs, but all the way throughout the day. As you've conducted these exercises, your muscles are going to become fatigued, so you must stretch. It's also key to make sure that you keep hydrated. When you are conducting these sessions, you need to make sure you have a water bottle with you. Key to injury prevention is also making sure that you get plenty of sleep and plenty of food in you. Okay, keep a nice, well-balanced diet. As a recap, we've covered today's PT session and a small piece on injury prevention. We hope you've enjoyed these sessions and it helps improve your ability on VPGFT assessment. As Ryan always says, we don't expect you to be the finished article, it's just something to help you get through the door.
Once again, thanks to Joe and Blaine for that session. As he said, it's super important to conduct all of the exercises with the correct technique. As we've mentioned before though, there are plenty of videos on the Royal Marines YouTube channel outlining exactly how to do them. As I said at the start of the series, some of you may be working at a level above this, but the purpose of these sessions is to ensure that you're ready for your virtual pre-joining fitness test when it comes around. They are also all main exercises that you will use throughout recruit training, so it'll be massively beneficial for you to master them early. If you aren't confident conducting these exercises at home, which the sessions are designed for, then please seek help from a fitness professional to make sure you don't cause yourself any harm. Before we hear from Blaine about his time in the Royal Marines and his recent combat PT course, as promised, I will finish off talking about the specialisations. This episode, I will cover the Lance Corporal qualifying specialisations, which are on your screen now. This simply means that you must be a Lance Corporal to conduct these courses and subsequent roles due to the rank requirement of them for various reasons. Firstly, we have Combat Intelligence. This is an extremely intensive course in which you will learn about gathering and using intelligence to enable a greater picture for the planning of operations. I'm not going in too much depth, but just to give you an idea. Second on the list is Communications Technician. This is what Sonny's role is, so you've already heard about all of that in episode 2. Next on the list is RM Police. This is a specialist role, and the guys that go down that route will conduct a very similar role to the police that you see normally, but in a much more specialist and military role. Further down, we have SFC, or Special Forces Communicator. This is a bespoke role, and you would be employed working alongside Special Forces, providing a vital communications function. Finally, Telecommunications Technician, or TELSTech as we call them. This is an extremely specialist role, and after several courses, you'll be used to fix the sensitive equipment and information technology systems used by other branches. That concludes your talk through the specialisations. That was in no way designed to ensure you fully know everything about all SQs, but just a way to give you a quick overview so that you can see the huge amount of options available to you. We are all commandos first, but the more we can specialise throughout our careers, the more we can remain as a self-sufficient and highly modernised fighting force. Right, now we're going to talk to Blaine about his time in the Corps and his recent Combat PT SSQ course that he completed. He's one of the first people to complete one of the new SSQ courses, and so we're lucky that he's here to talk us through it. So Blaine, do you mind just giving us a quick overview of your career so far?
Yeah, I was passed out of training and I went straight to 4-3 Commando, O Squadron. I was attached to a RTT team, Recapture Tactics Troop, as a rifleman. I did a year and a half there, and then I was drafted to the Commando recruitment team, in which I've obviously worked with yourself, and then I was recently placed on the PTSQ course.
As you mentioned, you've just done the PT SSQ, which is one of probably the newest course delivered at Lympstone recently. Just want to talk everyone through sort of what you did and the reason for doing it.
Yeah, so week 1 was circuit training in the gym, learning how to conduct circuits for the troop. It was an insight into the assisting RMFAs and RMFTs, conducting speed marches and rope climbing sessions. Week 2 was bottom field training, learning how to run circuits on bottom field and assisting with RMFAs. After that was week 3, where I conducted the RMCC unit instructor course, and then culminating in AT for the final week, being able to assist the PTI and taking lads on adventure training.
Yeah, awesome. Good overview of it. Obviously, you've used a few acronyms in there, but RMFT, Royal Marine Fitness Test, or RMFA, Royal Marine Fitness Assessment, and then Royal Marine Close Combat is what you did in the 3rd week, getting that qualification to make sure you can come back to the troop and train the rest of us and make sure that we're current and competent in it as well. And then you obviously did your adventure training qual at the end, which allows you to run expeditions and things like that for your peers across the Corps, which is awesome. Thanks for that. I think we'll move on now and talk a little bit about recruit training and when you were in it. So far in the series, we've covered absolutely everything, all the way up to the end of Final X. So now, if you wouldn't mind just talking us through sort of the Commando tests and what they entail, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the first Commando test is the endurance course. It's a 2-mile obstacle course through Rugby Common with your weapon and your rifle. A 4-mile best effort back to camp. It'll culminate in a 25-metre shoot to make sure you're still combat effective, and this must be done in 73 minutes. The second Commando test is the 9-mile speed march, run as a troop with weapon and rifle still, and that must be conducted over 9 miles, down Rugby Common, back to camp within 90 minutes. The third Commando test is the Tarzan Assault course, which is a high obstacle course leading onto bottom field, culminating in a 30-foot wall climb. That must be done in under 13 minutes. And then the day after that is a 30-miler from one side of Dartmoor to the other in 8 hours to get your Green Beret.
Which was the worst one?
Definitely the 30-miler for me.
30-miler, yeah, I think that's probably everyone's hardest one as well, isn't it? After you've got your Green Beret, which might add is probably best feeling ever, I'm sure for everybody that's been through it, you then obviously get ready for your King Squad pass out. Can you just sort of talk everyone through what that is?
Yeah, so after the Wednesday of completion of your 30 miler, you'll start your King Squad drill week on the Thursday, and you'll be doing drill every day until the Friday morning, in which you'll conduct your King Squad pass out. So every day you'll be conducting drill, making sure you're looking the part for when you pass out in front of your families.
Once you've done King Squad, probably not very much is known about exactly what goes on. What happens after that? Can you just explain to everyone?
So after the King Squad pass out, you'll have the weekend off, and then you'll turn to a unit, and then you're straight into a Commando unit.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Blaine. Obviously, probably less information out there about what happens straight after King Squad, but you do go straight to a unit, and that's you hit the ground running, Royal Marine Commando, doing the job that you joined up to do. Before I let you go, if you could give one piece of advice to the men and women watching who are obviously trying to join the Royal Marines, what would it be?
I'd say drop the weights, stop doing beach fizz, basically trying to look good, focus on running, doing the cardiovascular fitness. I'd still keep the weight training in, mainly for the lower limbs, compound lifts, like squats and deadlifts, but definitely endurance-based for yomping.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we've shown you in the PT sessions, that's all you need to do, to be honest. Those basic movements that you showed are basically all you need to do. As he said, if you already know what you're doing and you already train with things like deadlifts and squats, it's certainly no harm to keep them in, but certainly wouldn't be going for any 1-rep maxes or entering any bodybuilding competitions beforehand, just focusing on the basics. That now completes our talk through of training. You certainly don't need to try and remember all of what happens and when. Your main effort should be concentrating on getting into training and then remaining fit and healthy throughout. Training is progressive and has been designed and tested for years and years, so trust me, when you get to the Commando tests, you will be ready and able to pass them. Throughout the series, you've had a chance to look at some of the primary weapons that we use. You'll certainly learn more about these when you start training. We've also had a number of circuits delivered from the guys, which in all honesty are absolutely perfect to train for your virtual pre-joining fitness test or subsequently recruit training. They are all main core exercises that you will do, especially whilst you're in the gym at the start of training, so perfecting those techniques such as the press-ups, sit-ups and pull-ups at this stage is certainly going to help you when you get there. We've also spoken about the SSQ system and how specialising in the Royal Marines will look in the future, so something that will certainly be apparent to you by the time you've got into training, earned your Green Beret and got to a Commando unit. We've also spoken about the different stages of training and the different experiences that each of the guys have had, so hopefully that's given you a bit of insight and maybe relaxed you a little bit about it, because as I've said, it is achievable. Okay, ladies and gents, that is episode 5 and sadly the series coming to a close. Thank you very much for watching. We've certainly enjoyed it, so I hope you have too.